And I had to go through a lot I had to work, and then I had to sneak out of work. I was catching a cold, so I had to go to bed early last night and take things. And then what else did I go through? Then
Watch the Mets lose.
watch the Mets lose. I did that. And what else? What else? Then I always worried that I'm not going to be able to find the place, but I found it. And then I always worried that I'm going to forget my poems, but I remembered them. So I'm all set. Everything's working. All right. Thank you. Okay, so my first poem is, I'm not going to tell you a lot about myself because a lot of it's in my work, so you'll figure it out. This is called Feeding the Masses. I met some homeless people on the patio of a Jack in the Box by the 101 freeway. One of them asked me for half of my jumbo jack. Another asked me for my drink cup so he could get a refill, while another asked me if I could spare a few dollars. Tell you what, I told him, give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach a man a fish and he eats for life. One of them grabbed my fries and ate them. Look, I said to them, I'm going to give you something better than fish or fries. I'm going to give you poetry which feeds the soul. And if your soul is full, you'll never feel hungry. I pulled out a couple of poems and started reading. The one who asked for my drink cup got in an argument with the one who ate my fries. It takes a while to get in the spirit, I told him. Then I began reading my second poem. Halfway through, the guy who asked if I could spare a few bucks pulled out a knife and said, "Give me your money, motherfucker." It was fight or flight, and I fled my ass off. The masses aren't ready for poetry. Thank you. All right. This is called If You See Your Jewish Mother in the Road, Kill Her. The weed eater has a gas leak, so I haven't trimmed my lawn in months. So the association will probably write me up. But day after day, I sit on my ass and do nothing. I got the weed eater fixed several months ago, but the place changed location. I looked it up on the computer, but all I got was Yelp and Angie's List. I've always been working several hours a day, and this is the perfect time to take care of stuff like this. But watch, it'll get busy, and then I won't have the time or energy to do it. And I'll tell myself, you see, you should have done it when you had the chance. This is the way I talk to myself, always nagging like I'm my own Jewish mother. I looked up the place again where they might have moved and found it. The guy says he'll call me in a few days. Meanwhile, I should at least mow the lawn, but it's hot. I'll do it later. The Jewish mother in me says, do it now. You'll be too tired to do it later. She never shuts up. Thanks. This is called To Have and Have Not. I ordered car service in New York City to take me and my aged parents to the Port Authority because they're too old to get up and down all those stairs in the subway. The driver's name was Abdul Babas or something, and I was politically incorrect for even thinking of all those terrorist attacks. I sat in the front, we didn't talk, the traffic was heavy, and who wants to work and entertain people all day? So I didn't bother to ask, where are you from? After we crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, he took the East Side Drive, which crawled along. But worse was when he got to 42nd Street, he had to go cross town during rush hour with all those taxi drivers cutting in front of him, people jaywalking. It was harrowing and stressed me out, and I wasn't the one driving. I thought maybe wherever Abdul is from, he didn't have anything, but nobody had anything. Now here in America, everyone has everything, but all he has is his driver's license and cabs and trucks and buses pulling out in front of him. So people with everything don't have to hassle fighting traffic. And if it were me, after a year or two, I might consider strapping on a suicide vest, even without the virgins. All of a sudden, Abdul accelerated and made a tire screeching U-turn, landing us right in front of the Port Authority. I tipped him $25, but it wasn't nearly enough. Thank you again. Yeah. This is called Affluenza. Some teenager got drunk and behind the wheel and wound up killing 4 people. But his lawyer pulled the defense out of his ass that the kid was so affluent he was incapable of comprehending the consequences of his actions. And the judge, probably with early onset dementia and since retired, bought it, and the affluenza kid only got probation. But the poor kid, or rather the rich kid, was all over the internet playing beer pong, a violation of his probation. But the mother of affluenza, whose maternal instinct is to give the kid whatever he wants, took him down to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, to keep him out of the slammer. But one night the kid got hungry, so the mother got on her cell phone to order a pizza, extra meat, extra cheese, and the police traced the call and extradited her to the States for aiding and abetting while the kid is hiding out in the embassy or something. But it's only a matter of time before they take him kicking and screaming, because sooner or later, affluenza catches up with you.
Yes, we hope so.
I think they got him. Okay. This is called appetite for destruction. When you were a kid, you probably kicked over an anthill and watched the ants covered in dust running hither and yon, staggering around like drunks coming out of an all-night bar into the light. And you're like Godzilla coming out of the woodwork and stomping on their civilization. But give them 5 minutes and they get their communication lines working again. Everybody's where they're supposed to be, rebuilding, moving dirt, digging tunnels. Their food and supply chains come back to full operation, and by the time the dust settles, the ants never knew a calamity just happened. And you, who just caused the whole crisis, just stand there in the vacant lot like a big giant dummy, wondering what you could fuck up next. Okay, this is called Who's Watching? And it starts with a quote. Those who would trade freedom for security wind up with neither, and that's Ben Franklin. My old lady took up an offer for a security system so we could see whoever pulls up or walks in the driveway on her smartphone. She showed me coming home from work several times, which means if I ever had an affair, she'd catch me and whoever was with me red-handed. It's not that I plan on having an affair, but I don't like the idea that now I can't have an affair if I wanted to. To boot, there's a sensor on every door and sliding door, and every time we go to the garage or the backyard, you hear bing bong. So while our home may be more secure, it seems a little more like a prison. Okay. And this is called Dream On. If I had my druthers, I'd just write poems, which I'd get well paid for. And because I was a well-known and well-off poet, I'd have lots of girlfriends and have lots of sex with each girlfriend. But each girlfriend would know if she couldn't handle me seeing other women, she could take a hike. When I wasn't having sex with one of my girlfriends, I'd be writing about having sex with my girlfriends. But the reality is, I'm a poet that's been published in a few of the small presses where they give you one contributor's copy, and I work in a nursing home 6 days a week. I live with my old lady who has sex with me about once every other week, and if she caught me with another woman, she'd cut my balls off and throw me out into the street. Okay.
She keep the balls?
All right. This is called Better to Give. My sister sent me a gift certificate for a massage, and I was pretty beat up after work, so I decided to use it. I was glad I'd taken a shower and remembered to change my underwear. The masseuse was a Chinese lady who only knew one word of English. Okay, she'd ask when she pressed really hard into my neck or back. Okay, I'd say back. I thought maybe I'd get lucky and she'd give me a happy ending, but I certainly wasn't going to ask her for one when the only word she knew was okay. And actually, I felt bad for her that she had to work so hard on me that I'll bet her neck, back, and shoulders hurt more than mine after she finished. And I offered to get off the table and massage her, but that probably wasn't okay. So instead, I tipped her $20 and she hugged me. And even though I didn't get a happy ending, at least she did.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's leave that there. Okay, this is called One for the Records. My daughter boasted, oh, she's 9, by the way. My daughter boasted one of her farts lasted more than 20 seconds. And I wondered what the record was, so I checked the net, which led me to a clip on YouTube. It said 1 minute, 8 seconds. But rather than just look at a number in the Guinness Book of Records, we got to watch the whole thing. A guy in a mask, probably to hide his identity as the world's longest farter, put a mic up to his butt and let her rip. But for all we know, there could have been someone in the closet making farting noises. Records should always be verified. Then another link caught my eye. While court was in session and a judge was handing out fines and sentences, some guy at the end of the bench cut one loose. The camera panned to a row of white guys in orange jumpsuits, petty criminals with multiple arrests for public intoxication. The judge confronted the culprit, who was unapologetic. Hey, I'm not feeling well, he said matter-of-factly. I'm sure he was badly hungover and probably wolfed down an extra-large pizza from the 7-Eleven, heavily laden with jalapenos. The judge said, where was I before I was so rudely interrupted, and resumed handing out sentences. Anyway, we could have watched fart videos all night, but my daughter had to wake up for school. She's so lucky she's a millennial. When I was a kid, they didn't have YouTube. Thank you. And this is called In the 60s, which bled into the 70s. You'd go over someone's house and automatically looked at their record albums. Everyone basically had the same albums. Who's Next, Get Your Yayas Out by the Rolling Stones, Woodstock, Led Zeppelin, and you'd start reading the album covers even though you had them at home. Then someone would light up a joint and pass it around and play those same records, and you'd start to melt into the couch and become withdrawn. Most of the conversation would be, that's some good shit, man, or we had front row seats to see the Stones and we were tripping on window pane. And you'd sink down lower into the couch. Then finally someone would say, I have to split. And someone else would say, me too. And then everyone would split, and you probably went home because you were hungry, and that was pretty much it for the 60s. Okay. This is called Locked In. I live in a gated community, which sounds like I'm boasting, but really living in a gated community means you're locked up with a bunch of lowlives. And if one of them came after you, it'd be much harder to get away from them, with the gate encasing you like being in prison. The association is like the warden driving around inspecting your lawn. If it isn't mowed or weeded, they write you a letter giving you a deadline to make the corrections or else. One inmate from a few houses down, maybe in fear from the association, trimmed his tree down to the nub, cutting all the branches, leaving essentially a long stump. A year and a half later, the stump has grown minuscule shoots with leaves on them, and every time I drive past that abomination, I'm reminded of what life in a gated community could do to a person. This is called the Executioner's Song. When I was a kid, me and my friend Jamie would get this big magnifying glass and focus it on an ant. We'd watch the poor ant heat up and walk faster. It seemed the ant knew something was wrong and something terrible was going to happen. The ant was right because a few seconds later it burst into flames, turning its tiny exoskeleton into a wisp of smoke. And if ants could scream, it would have been horrifying, blood-curdling. Me and Jamie were cruel, maybe because our parents had divorced. At any rate, it wasn't the ant's fault. And 50 years later, I believed I paid for every one of those ants I executed and then some. I don't know about Jamie. And this is called Don't Stint. I'm going to hell for saying this, but my mom's getting old. And while she used to be a great cook, now she slaps food on the table and calls it a meal. It's whatever's around, tomato slices, bread she pulls out of the freezer with butter. She pulls, maybe some old rice or pasta from last week and a can of tuna. But that's not what annoys me. Tell the truth, it does annoy me, but it shouldn't. After all, I could offer to pick up a few things and cook if I want. But what really annoys me is at the table when you're trying to spread frozen butter on defrosted bread because you couldn't get the mushy pasta or rice. Like clockwork, my mother will look at you and say, "We have plenty of everything, so don't stint," emphasizing the T's on don't and stint. All pleased with herself, not only because she can pull out more frozen bread or dish out more mushy pasta and rice, but because she feels so clever coming up with the phrase don't stint. And every time I see her, I starve, but I don't stint. Okay. And this is called Who's the Boss? I was waiting for the cars to take off from the parking lot outside my daughter's dance studio so I could take a piss. "Can't use the bathroom inside like a normal person?" she asked. We went inside. There was a line for the bathroom. I knew this was going to be a hassle, I said. She led me across the dance floor to another little-used bathroom. When I came out, she asked me if I closed the lid. "Yes," I said. "Really?" she questioned me and looked into my eyes to see if I was telling the truth. "Okay, fine," she said, taking my word. And I saw a turning point that more and more my 8-year-old will be the one calling the shots. Okay. This is called Not In It For Your Health. There's this young big pharma hedge fund manager CEO named Martin Shkreli, and just looking at his smug face makes you want to slap it. But they didn't hire Shkreli to be liked. They hired him because he's highly educated in the art of greed, and he promptly raised the price of a life-saving drug for snake bites from a few bucks to $700. But Shkreli isn't in the life-saving business. He's in the making as much money as possible business. And when there was a media firestorm over his price gouging, Shkreli quoted rapper Eminem, "When they point the finger at me, I point it back at them, the middle." It's not Shkreli's problem if you were so dumb you got bit by a snake and can't afford the drug. Sell your house, borrow from your mother, rob a bank. Shkreli's a drug-dealing pimp rolled into one, and he needs to get paid. Okay. This is called Getting Ink. I got a tattoo back in 1981 when I was in the Army stationed in Germany. The guy that did it was Eddie from Nuremberg, the same place where they tried the Nazis. They said Eddie was the third best tattoo guy in all of Europe. Rodney, who came with me, tried to pressure me into getting the same tattoo as him, a blue peacock, but I picked a wolf because at the time I was reading Jack London's Call the Wild. I wasn't the type of guy to get a tattoo, but just about everyone in the Army gets them, and just about everyone does what everyone else does. Only thing is, when people see my tat, they say, "What's that, a kitty cat?" I don't believe Eddie was the third best in all Europe. Thanks. And this is called Love Leaves You Hanging. The song says, looking for love in all the wrong places, but surely love won't be found in the wrong places. But there are no right places to find love. And the more you look for love, the more it evades you. If and when it's ready, love finds you. But only in the movies does love ride off with you into the sunset. Love leaves you the same way it finds you, vanishes into the ether from where it came, or love hangs around and gradually you leave it. Only a fool hangs around waiting for a love that's already gone. Okay, so I just celebrated my 60th birthday a couple weeks ago, and this is called Soon to Be 60. Oh, so I wrote it a little bit before. Many of the people I grew up with in Brooklyn have died, victims of the times, the drug-addled 60s, the lifestyle, chain smoking and drinking. I was going down that path, but to get away, I joined the Army. And when I came out, I came to the West Coast and never went back and reinvented myself. I'm a survivor, but that's not necessarily a good thing, like a cockroach that runs and hides when the lights come on. Unlike the people I grew up with in Brooklyn who stuck it out and met their fate head on. And I'm gonna close on this. And this is called Stuck. I should have known better than to take my dogs to the dog park when one of them, Ginger, a Chihuahuan Dachshund, was in heat. It wasn't long before she met a dog aptly named Romeo, who started humping her, while my other dog, Wubsy, also a female, humped Romeo. The three of them in perfect sync, enough to make any porn star jealous. Romeo's owner, a woman around 30, said not to worry. Romeo was fixed. Romeo is also part Chihuahua, but his other part was pit bull. As unlikely a pairing as you could get. She explained when female pits go in heat, they're totally submissive, and no dog is turned away. She said the breed is known as a Santa Maria Special. We in Santa Maria are pretty ghetto. Anyway, Wubsy stopped humping Romeo. She's a lesbian. And Romeo really got into Ginger, so much so he couldn't get out of her. All of a sudden, I became as big a prude as a pilgrim hitting Plymouth Rock and wandered away to let Romeo's owner deal with it. When I got back, she was Googling how to separate two dogs fucking. I wouldn't have minded doing the macho thing I'd always heard, throwing a cold bucket of water on them, but Sari, whoever the guy on the phone is, said to leave them stuck together and wait, which could take a half hour and upwards. So there I was, waiting for Romeo's hard-on to subside. Shit, it would be awesome if I could get stuck inside some woman for a half hour. And it was so embarrassing as all the other dog owners were just walking by rubbernecking like they just passed a horrific freeway accident. One old lady said, "Poor dears," but that didn't help any. Then to make matters worse, somehow they wound up butt to butt, with Ginger's head facing one way and Romeo's in the opposite direction. You couldn't find a position like that in the Kama Sutra. It seemed to defy the law of nature, physics, and mechanics. Poor Romeo, her owner tried to move his legs back to their original position, but to no avail, so she called her vet. But she couldn't add anything more than Sari. It seemed they'd be locked together for eternity when Romeo, who must be the John Holmes of dogs, finally went soft, and they were freed. I apologized to Romeo's owner profusely. Then I scooped up my dogs and hightailed it out of there. And that's it. Thanks. Hey, thanks, everybody. I had a lot of fun up here. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. So.